But viewer, you are watching Xirtus. This is because Xirtus makes you feel good, makes you feel fulfilled. You are enjoying this. You will continue to watch Xirtus for a long time to come. You want to subscribe to Xirtus, and you will. You will like and subscribe and share. You will tell your friends. Tell your friends about Xirtus. Your friends will come to like Xirtus, much as you are liking this right now, as we speak. Thank you for subscribing to Xirtus. See, that was easy.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.
I swear that they're making my videos glitch more. Is that just me, or like the compression of StreamYard's falling apart? Gonna have to re-upload it, StreamYard.
I don't know. Sometimes it's just on the receiver end, but
Yeah,
who knows? Yeah.
How you been?
I'm doing pretty good. I've been feeling a lot more healthy lately. I was doing an extreme diet for like a month and a half. No sugar, no dairy, no carbs, no alcohol, no gluten, lots of no's.
Yeah, that's a good start. I feel like none of those things are important. You don't need any of those things.
Oh, no carbs is the hardest one.
Oh, you can replace carbs, man. It's hard, but if you just go with like, let's see, like protein things and fats, so like cashew butter or something like that, like sprout a bunch of cashews, soak them in water overnight, make like a nacho cheese sauce out of it.
Oh, I was doing almond butter on like these bland rice cakes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, get like well, almond butter's good on apple slices, but maybe like get like flaxseed. You can get flaxseed, sprout that, get some water on flaxseed, and then spread it out, and then it'll dry, and you get these crackers made out of the fake glutinous material that comes out of flax seeds. And that's okay to eat too. High fiber stuff.
The good
Chicken
thing is,
and butter and cheese in salad. Like a big lettuce wrap.
yeah.
Yeah, full
But
keto.
eggs and steaks and broths, those are all good, so that was fine.
Yeah. So you feel way better though that you cut out all that crap?
Dude, I feel like almost like I have a new gut system now. I feel so much better. It's really good.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like the stuff that people eat are, it's insane. It was one of the flaws of our system, because people are like, well, technically anything could kill you. I mean, the fact that you live your life in America and the food you eat, you're like, well, good point. But I don't do that.
Dude, my gut used to be so bad. If I eat a spicy meal, I would have like the next day, I would just have headaches all day long, like debilitating headaches. And I tested my first spicy meal. I ate 3 spicy meals in a row. No problem.
Dude. All right. Well, Sean is almost ready for class. He just has to put in the eye
What I
drops.
miss?
No,
There he
I
is.
just like if I was a teacher, thank God I'm not. But like if I saw like kids coming to school with eye drops, I'd be like, okay, I get it, bro. You vape. I get it. You know what I mean? Like, does anybody use eye drops who doesn't get super blazed? I mean,
Oh no, these are for contact lenses. Jesus Christ.
ah, man, and that's what's really sad. I remember driving across America, and I had to get contacts because there's like all this grass, and it was like my eyes were like bleeding from like the pollen.
Springtime, bro.
And this lady looked at me like, okay, I don't know what drugs you're trying to hide yourself from doing right now, boy. And I was just like, dude, I can't even see outside. Like, it's horrifying.
Yo, seriously, the pollen in New York is starting up, and it's not forgiving at all here. Like, that shit fucking rocks. Like, I live right by a river too, so it just blows. Like, the wind just blows, and it's like wherever it is coming from in town, it comes here.
I like how we're all wearing white shirts. Mine's the most offensive. It actually says,
Oh my god.
it says, if this offends you, you need a history lesson. And then it has every single, I don't even know how to do this in the mirror. Context is everything, right?
Oh,
it's
wow.
Like context for Christians, Africans, Buddhists, Islamic,
That's
the other
hilarious.
side.
Why is it a Homer donut?
Greek. Well, because,
That's like the most perplexing part of it.
I remember seeing this. I've actually interviewed the guy who makes this shirt. I remember seeing like in LA at like a concert, this dude Sinjin with this shirt on dancing around, and I was like, dude, that's so hardcore. You know what I mean? It's so punk rock, but it's so obviously it's a donut. Like it's clearly made with love. It's this loving symbol.
Like, I just got like a healthy snack, and you're making me want to go get the fucking chocolate cake out of my fridge.
Dude, they should make Canadian donuts, I think. But
Yo, those
yeah.
Homer donuts are fucking wild. Like, you go to 7-Eleven, you get like a vanilla fucking coffee and a Homer donut. That shit gets you good all day.
Yeah,
Shouldn't eat it though. It's not good for you.
I don't do that. Yeah,
I don't usually eat sugar unless I'm like right about to work out, and even then I'll have half the donut.
Spiritual Punks is the name of Sinjin's group, and he's got a couple interesting symbols going on
Wow.
here. But he's a really interesting guy. His grandfather was a prophet essentially to like Midwestern like America in the 1900s. Kind of like another Joseph Smith kind of character in a sense.
No way.
Yeah, in a way.
Did he like translate like an Egyptian book, or what was he doing?
I forget what the deal is. He's not quite that. But he's like a pretty important like spiritual leader. I forget the whole story.
Did he have a harem?
No, he wasn't like a bad guy. He was a chill guy.
Dude,
But like his
he's
grandfather
he's
was
low level cultist. Can't
yeah, that's
compare
true.
with
That's true.
Joseph
I
Smith.
don't even remember his name. It's fair.
Wrong category.
It's hard to even
Different tier.
So like, what does the swastika in that context mean? Because I mean, it's got to mean something, right?
Yeah, so like love, luck, happiness, the sun, all sorts of positive symbolism. I mean, here he's showing like all of the different cultural, Islam, the Jewish swastika, the Hindus, the Celts, the cross. It's often represented, in Celtic cross art and in German cross art. So
yeah, it was in the Sanskrit. They used it for the wheel of time or something like that, right?
Right, Finland. Air Force. You can look at the Finland Air Force symbol.
I guess they don't use it anymore. Yeah,
they changed it just a couple years ago, but this was what they were using up until like 2019 or something.
Whoa,
like that.
Really? That's fucking wild.
Yeah,
I guess it's supposed to be the propeller, right?
Theirs was older, yeah. So they just finally changed it, but yeah, it's a propeller, and so this was part of their cultural heritage. Basques in Spain is a big one.
I feel like probably around like 2150 we can probably start like letting that be a thing again. But right now it's still a sensitive topic. You know what I mean? A lot of people are going to see that and get the wrong idea, and then they're just not going to buy your stuff.
Right. But like
especially with Israel and Palestine, there's still Israeli sensitivities.
Right.
Oh yeah, and Palestine is using that in that context in certain places too, where Palestinians and American protesters too. They're like reopening the old wounds.
Right. There are misuses of the swastika, but like you have to understand, like right now, if you go to Spain, like if you go to the Basque Country, The symbol of the Basques is called the Basque Cross. This is their symbol. You'll see it in every restaurant. You'll see it on every napkin. You'll see it on hats and on flags.
I'm not sure if it's prominent in other parts of America the way the bricks are laid, but in New York before the war, there was a really prominent bricklaying pattern where you'd have like it looked like a pitched roof from the front, but it was just a facade. And right under the pitch, there was a circle of brick, like a 90-degree circle of bricks that was essentially a swastika that was real popular up until that war. And then if you look now, you'll see a scar at that spot in all the fucking buildings where they literally cut the bricks out.
Right. You can see American use of it, obviously.
There was a basketball team in Chicago that used it in like the 19 teens.
The Lafayette Escadrille. Yeah, misuse of the swastika in the 20th century is a pretty big problem. But, you know, you can also see the 21st century. We talked about this the other day. Gamadian nano cross sections is the one here. This is what they're creating photon nanoturbines at the... Because this is the most perfect shape. If light hits this, it starts to spin, right? So you can create photonic turbines. So we're hitting a point where
that's like the actual physical like unit of matter that light is crashing into to make it turn.
Right. Yeah. There's articles on this. I can probably pull up.
Nazism is harnessing the power of light.
This is made in Berkeley and by the Chinese, and you know in Tel Aviv they're working on photogamadian nanotechnology. This is not something that is like a cultural thing, like you know Xinfang. Yeah. Although you could say like in China they have less of a cultural animosity towards the Gamadian or the swastika. Like, they don't have the same cultural issues with looking at the symbol, so they're able to find out that there are natural properties of it. But that doesn't mean that we have to forget that it was misused either. I think we can acknowledge, you know, all of the horrors of the 20th century while remembering this is a very ancient symbol that probably has some mathematical qualities to it, right? Like it's kind of like if we were to ban the golden ratio. Like, I mean, if the golden ratio represented a hate crime symbol or something like that, like I can get, like you'd say, oh yeah, that could happen. Like the Greeks were, you know, something could happen. But
genociding in the name of the golden ratio.
Dude, things happen like that. So
yeah, if someone were to, if there was a neo-Hitler that was like using the cross, then Christians would be kind of screwed. They'd get their symbol hijacked by a tyrant.
Honestly, that's kind of what's happening with the Westboro Baptist. Isn't that kind of what's going on with the Westboro Baptist Church and a lot of groups? Like a lot of people hate Christianity because of misuse of you know the idea of Christianity. I think that's exactly what's going on with Christianity.
Yeah, there's a lot of backlash against it for no reason beyond the fact that there's a few assholes in the like doing that.
Yeah. Well, you know.
I mean, there's a spectrum to atrocity. Like, you know, yelling at a gravesite is like really bad, but like genocide is, you know, a little bit worse.
And for anybody who's upset, don't worry. For the next week, I'll be wearing my Israeli military T-shirts. I just wanted to support Sinjin. All right. But Seth, you had some amazing, like earlier you sent me. I wish I could just post it. I'm gonna just post this as a comment, and maybe you know what? I've been wanting to do this as a poll. I don't know how to do polls. Does anyone know how to do a poll on like YouTube?
I have no idea. I do not use YouTube that much.
Oh my god,
there's a way to do it. I don't know. I haven't done it.
All right, so if anyone's a mod and can do this, how do we do this?
I just want to rant about the Nazi swastika real quick.
Good.
Good
morning conversation.
I don't know what Sean's background is religiously, but I come from a pretty religious background, and I'm an atheist now. One thing I see a lot is like synchronicity logic, right? Are you familiar with the concept of synchronicity?
You can get rich finding quarters on the sidewalk.
Yeah, you're finding like parallels between things, and then you think, oh, this is a divine connection. So like, if like the Christians had like a symbol, and then you like go into like the Native American traditions, and you find the same symbol, they're like, oh, they were inspired by Jesus. You know what I mean? That's the synchronicity religious logic. But like just Andreas's example of like all of these different cultures are like hijacking a similar pattern. Like the moral of the story is when you see two things that look the same, it doesn't mean they're connected. It's easy to reinvent.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so easy to reinvent the same thing. Yeah.
No, that school is so
Especially,
much older than the things it was used for. It's not even funny. It's just that in the current cultural context, the way, not even the way I react to it, just the way anybody like random is going to react to it, especially not given the full context,
oh,
might
for
give them the
sure.
wrong idea. That's
So
what I would worry about.
I added the
That's why if I were to create an organization, I wouldn't use that as the symbol, at least for another 150 or so years.
I added the poll. Objective morality exists. We've got so far 90%
Yeah.
is saying yes, 10% saying no, 89, 82. It's changing all the time. It's lovely to watch this. Actually, I get why people.
Objective morality.
do
That's
this.
interesting.
Yeah. I
Where
wish I
where's
could
the
rig
poll?
it. It's,
Am I able
you,
to locate
You have
it?
to click on the YouTube link. So if you go to the top up there, you see like
Oh shit!
go to
What
like
just happened?
youtube.com/Xirtus or the live Xirtus live.
YouTube.
But you can vote there. It's 18% saying no.
Oh wow, that's great.
So
Live. Is it inside the live video?
it's on the chat screen of the live video. Yes, that's where it's at. What do you think about objective morality, Sean? Does it exist?
I don't think objective morality exists, but I do believe that human morality exists. Like, do you believe
Oh,
that
nice.
objective to the universe or objective to like us as a species, universal to each and every one of us?
Explore both concepts. I mean, because I think
think
half
that
of
if
the
we were-
audience, there's a lot of people saying they think it exists, probably because they think there's some sort of
If
universal
we were a species of
physics.
intelligent snakes, that like then we would probably like not even recognize members of our own species as anything other than food. Then there would probably be no, or at least a very different form of morality that we would follow. But since we're human beings, we don't do that. Like, we have something inbuilt into us that causes us to feel differently about that, and we should follow that because that's what's been working for us for so long. Like, if we were to go against that, it would probably
think
be
that-
more to our detriment than our help.
Do you think that underneath ethic, and because we've got this idea of like ethical principles that are learned routines, but in terms of objective morality,
I think they're
maybe
instinctual.
do you think that they're different? Maybe ethic is learned and objective morality has to do with physics and biology and preserving life. and
Just a
structure.
quick question: did my camera break, or is it just on my end?
Yeah, it's broken.
No, I can't see you moving.
I thought that was like I always think you're just really good at that because people that can hold their eyes open should be actors, like Michael Caine always says. God bless Michael.
Oh my god,
What?
I could not do that without.
I'm gonna close
being
the
laser
poll.
for that.
You guys had your chance. That was it. I'm gonna say it was 20%, but it says 15% said no. But I'm just gonna say it was 20 because it bounced around a little bit. Ooh, Keenan. Morality is survival plus happiness, pain of everyone. Is that morality equals survival plus happiness minus pain of everyone? Is that, did I do that formula reading right?
Yeah, I think like there's a certain level of quorum to morality. Like it requires like the consent of the larger group.
Okay, well then, so free will exists, does not exist. Let's do that one. That's going to be the next poll. Does free will exist?
A human being, I think it's just a chemical process, but the universe itself has free will.
Yeah, if the human being is a chemical process, that doesn't more objective morality have to do with physics. That's what it sounds like.
So I have to address the subjective morality, So I have a blog called Transcendent Philosophy, and I've primarily, the vast majority of my thought is on morality. And so I almost went the non-cognitivist or the anti-realist approach, but I kind of landed on something that's more objective. But I guess it does take it takes an introduction to like a perspective on what objective actually means. So I view objective and subjective, the distinctions, like there's like a meta distinction, right? So like words can be used differently in different contexts. The word objective can be, in grammar, there's the subject and the object of a sentence, right? Different contexts, different meanings, but there's like a meta pattern where all of the usages of objective follow a certain pattern, right? And the meta pattern for the definition, it's like an object, right? Like a subject. And so when we're thinking about what does it mean to be like an object, What we're talking about is something that's like verifiable. It's something that's measurable. Like third parties can like go touch it and see that it's there. You know what I mean?
You're breaking up.
What?
I hear you.
Yeah. So when we're talking about is morality objective versus subjective, the question is it something that can be measured, or is it something inside our brains that's kind of like mysterious, and it's really hard to get inside the brain and see what does your pain look like? What does your pleasure look like, right? The subject is the I of a sentence, right? And so the question is morality something out there that we can measure, or is it something in here that's beyond measurement, right? Does that seem fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think I see what you're getting at there. Like it requires it's like it has an objective element, but requires an observer, right?
Yeah, like third party and like they're like if you can measure it, then there should be right and wrong questions, right? So if you say what's the temperature, like if we go measure it, then we got the right answer and everyone else is wrong. You know what I mean?
Okay, so we got 73% says that they think free will exists. 27% think it does not exist.
Wow.
And
interesting. I'm very curious what Sean's take is. I'm assuming no based on what I heard from Andreas.
I don't know. It seems to be that there needs to be something that needs to be on the other end of morality. Like if you were the only being in the universe, would anything you did be truly moral or immoral? So it almost seems like a paradox because you need to have some subjective other to experience what you're doing for there to be any semblance of moral or immoral behavior to begin with. So it seems like it has to be a subjective system to me.
So I guess I would agree that there's a subjective component, but my take on the measurability of morality, it reduces to game theory, right? So game theory is like the mathematical approach to what is the right behavior. You know what I mean? And so in social species, like tit for tat is the most commonly observed strategy of how to interact in a moral way, right? If someone is bad to you, the correct thing is you have to be bad to them. That's justice, right? Justice is good because now we've leveled the playing field and now I can survive better because I've just punished your bad behavior. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so the whole game theory framework, it sets up a mathematical paradigm. Now, the problem is it's extremely complex, right? Like if you're trying to calculate 8 billion people with all of these neurons that have different strategies and the factors for survival, there's like millions of factors that affect survival. So from a calculation standpoint, like truly measuring it is almost impossible to calculate. But hypothetically, in principle, if you had good enough software, you could simulate the entire evolutionary landscape and you could calculate the correct game theory.
But that still requires a subjective experiencer of your behavior. And there has to be you have to understand what is a correct and incorrect way to treat that experiencer, that other.
Need for religion is a must. Who needs it? This one's more divisive.
Oh, wow. Okay, nice. You've got interesting audience here.
What?
I'm going to need a list of all these so I can demograph this audience.
This is good, yeah.
So your point was you think that you're saying that we need subjectivity. I missed the last half of that. The subjectivity connects to the what? Sean disappeared.
Sorry about that. I just had to close my window. There's something blowing around. I think there's a tarp out there.
So what do you think about what do you say, Seth? Repeat the question.
I forgot. I lost the train of thought. You said something about like it needs a connection between subjectivity and something else.
Yeah, like
morality.
you need to have something experiencing your behavior for that behavior to be immoral or moral. Otherwise, you're just acting in a vacuum, and it's not really going to be able to be registered on that scale.
Also valuable to like what behaviors are valuable change. You know, like you might think that everyone should be like someone could bring you a gift every day because it seems polite to bring you a gift every day, but eventually your house is filled with things. You know, like there's time and place.
Are you familiar with the concept of supervenience, a philosophic concept?
No, I haven't heard of it.
I should just explain these anyway in case the audience doesn't know. Supervenience is when there's like a concept that is dependent upon another concept, right? And so it's when two concepts become interlinked such that if you change the deeper concept, you change the superficial concept. So supervenience is the superficial concept is dependent on the deeper concept, right?
It's like, but that's the one that you experience the lower concept through because it's like wrapping around the other one, right?
Exactly.
Like I don't experience cells directly. I experience living people and cats and dogs.
Exactly. You nailed the application of it. And so like, it sounds like you're going the well-being perspective for morality, like the sentience, how does it feel? Correct me if I'm wrong, but my paradigm, well-being supervenes on game theory. So if you change the game theory, you change the well-being. Does that make sense?
I could see that, but like, is well-being the only factor that is dependent on what is a moral way to treat someone and what isn't?
I mean, okay, let me see if I can explain this.
We're at 50-50 with religion is a must. This is really
wow.
This is really interesting.
Wow, it's a debate. Okay.
I really want to end the poll right here and be like, oh, it's a tie. I won't.
True neutral.
So I've done lots of hours and pages of content on this, so I don't know how much we want to devote to the morality debate, but I can try to add, a couple more minutes to try to really or Andreas, what do you think? How deep should we go on morality?
Bro, like this deep, probably.
Oh, okay. You like it deep, huh? Okay, so let me put it this way.
We're going to talk about morality. That's the only metric that Americans won't use the metric system. So,
okay. David Hume was a philosopher. He talked about hypothetical imperatives, which was basically saying morality is connected to goals. So there's a hypothetical imperative. It's like if your goal is to survive, then it's good to eat food. If your goal is to propagate, then it's good to have sex. You know what I mean? But then the Humean paradigm of morality, it's like, well, what's your goal? Like, who says you have the right goal? You can go down that pathway. But the problem is evolution creates the goal. Like you can't apply skepticism and say, why should I have the goal of well-being? It's like, because evolution forces you to have the goal of well-being. You know what I mean? And so what happens is evolution, it's forcing you to have the correct goals, right? And if you have the incorrect goals, you die. And so everything that exists, it exists because it had the correct goals in order to exist. You know what I mean? And so the game theory is, okay, we need to survive, so we need to eat. And then therefore, I'm going to program you to feel pain if you don't do the game theory, right? So evolution is enforcing the game theory with well-being.
So then all animals are always acting perfectly morally?
No. It gets more complicated with social creatures because you've got trade-offs, right? It's like there's what's good for me, and then there's what's good for you, and that's what's at odds. It's like my game theory says I want to eat you. Your game theory says you want to let me starve. And now we're at odds and we have to figure out how to reconcile this. When it comes to humans, it's like, I want to steal your stuff and I want to shoot you to defend my property, right? Similar dynamics. When it comes to the social landscape of evolution is looking at a deeper layer. So like the problem with superficial perspectives on morality is like, oh, morality operates at the level of the individual. It's like, no. The evolution, it cares about the genes, right? And so morality is operating at the level of the genes. And so if you create a society where you just go steal, you just go murder, you just go rape, you're creating a horrible society for your children to get raised in. You know what I mean? And so you're harming the collective genes when you do immoral things to the society that is the vehicle for those genes.
Yeah, there's also just systems that are broken. Like, so you've got someone with wheat and you got someone with milk, a dairy farmer and a wheat, farmer. And the wheat's going to go bad and the milk's going to go bad. So they trade it because they both need the other's resources. And, one might be thinking, wow, I got so much more wheat than I need because I had to get rid of this milk. And the other's thinking, wow, I got so much more milk than I need because I had to get rid of this wheat. So I don't know. It seems like we could build a system that was built of positive reciprocity. And in nature, that seems like a major thing. You have a lot of animals that are...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I don't think that's what we build society on, though. We build society on economy and what we are and like what threatens
economy
us
just
and
means
our
the running
property.
Economy just means the running of the house. Right?
That's what I mean. Yeah, I literally mean like what we can like achieve with what we can like pick and claw out of nature. Yeah, and anything that threatens that either gets thrown in a cage or killed if it's severe enough. And that's
I guess the house is
literally
the economy
what
has changed. It used to be that everyone had like a family and they had like a food supply that they all shared from, like socialists, and now it's like people mark what they have in their refrigerator because they don't know each other very well, even though they live together.
Are you familiar with what Marx said on the capitalization of the family?
No.
You suck mine. Could we be where we are now without Christianity? I'm making it a poll. That's a good one.
Oh.
Could we be where we are now without Christianity? Yes. No. Okay.
So Marx, there's an excerpt. I think it's in the Communist Manifesto where he talks about it. It's like a 2-paragraph thing, and it's just kind of an interesting little note about capitalism. He basically says, or he posits that the economic system of capitalism is going to infect the culture of the family, and parents are going to view their kids as like means of production, and it's like, I need to maximize the profit of my children. So kids are just assets, and that you want to minimize the cost of a kid, maximize the utility of a kid. His fear is that's how the family will evolve.
I don't think that's what's happening yet. So at least he can relax on that front.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sure, like morality is definitely a useful lens to see all of this stuff through. But I really think that the way the world is operating is just like, all right, we've got our people and our things, and anything that threatens that is going to have to be dealt with in some way, whether or not it be the best way. I mean, if they put themselves in that position, it doesn't have to be the best way. So,
yeah.
So I think moral phenomena does have a lot to do with what happens with your actions, because people start to realize it doesn't matter what your intentions are, your actions will have consequences, and they might change over time. But that's a lot of what the I think the lost concept is in the West, because the West is so obsessed with intention, and it's hard to.
I also feel like a lot of people try to use morality as like some sort of like trick to try to justify something that they probably shouldn't have done.
What do you?
True.
What's an example?
Genocide.
Yeah, like a lot of religious wars.
Yeah. Damn, what's that guy's name? There's like I think he's German. There's a German philosopher who he talks about amorality. I think he wrote a book called Amorality. His whole thesis is the concept of morality is basically a social weapon, and so we'd be better getting rid of morality as a concept.
Yeah, if we just debated pure consequence and whether or not we could label something moral or immoral, then I think we'd have a more concrete understanding of the things we were talking about rather than forcing an abstraction of it.
Yeah, I think I haven't.
Moral and immoral almost seem to be ways to blur the world rather than to understand it more clearly.
We've got so far 27% said yes, 73% no. But Memory Man had a good comment, which was that we could be in, he thought, a better place. His opinion was a better place.
Yeah.
Which is technically a different place. So
yeah.
But like we can talk about like say what was that Aaron Brockovich chemical incident that was a hexavalent chromium was dumped somewhere where there was people drinking from that water. Like yeah, we could say that was moral or immoral behavior, but that only obscures like hey, they poisoned a bunch of people. Like you'd still have to ask one more question if I just said they did something immoral, or I could just say they poisoned a bunch of people, and then you already know, hey, they did something really fucked up.
Yeah. It's complicated. I'm kind of torn both ways. I haven't really figured out if I'm in favor of the amoral stance or not.
I think moral's a weird idea because again, these things have to do with the consequences of actions. You're trained like, well, what happened when dad did this or grandfather did this, and they're like, this is what happened. So you learn that, and it's not always the case, which is why like the Tao, that idea of like constantly changing reality, is important because you have to always look for the intention behind something.
Right.
But that seems to me like to prove that there is a difference between learned ethic, right? And ethic is like the study of moral phenomena versus objective morality, which I think is probably just like physics. You know, like it's right that 2 and 2 is 4 or something like that. And
do you view physics as different from my take on game theory?
not entirely, but I mean, I think game theory is. I think we should expand on game theory a little bit more along with the lines of sentientism. You use the word sentientism.
Game theory is basically like like everything emerges from physics, right? And so game theory is like technically physics when you reduce it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're in the game. I think the deal though is that those rules in physics are so interesting and important. Like it's like looking at the Unreal Engine. I know I've been looking at gaming and stuff, but it's such a crazy world that's created. There's no way that it could just be a random accident. You know, all these people, all these angels that are working together to create and manifest this physics engine. So
Sean is one of those shiny angels, isn't he?
True, yeah.
I mean, I honestly hope we're in a simulation that's being run by an AI or something like that, because that means it would prevent us from creating like a little copy of itself. Because if it's trying to simulate us, that means it's trying to study us, and it wouldn't be useful to just have another iteration of itself within itself. So it would actively prevent us from gravitating towards that. Not to change the subject towards that, but yeah. Like, I feel like a simulation is, like, the most comfortable option, because if we're at the top level, that means anything can happen.
Yeah, but if it's a simulation that doesn't care, because it has more to do with us just, like, generating energy or something, that's the thing. I think we still don't know if it's really a game. Like, a lot of the time, it's weird that Christianity is all about, it's a game that you could lose and go to hell. That's a very weird ideology.
It makes total psychological sense. Are you kidding me?
Explain.
It's like Christianity, heaven and hell is the ultimate carrot and stick. If you want to manipulate behavior, psychology is all about rewards, punishment, reinforcement, negative reinforcement. It's like, don't do the hell thing, go do the heaven thing. Like, it's ultimate cultural manipulation of behavior.
Yeah, that's really all it is.
Yeah, that's exactly. So, but in other words, that's the reason it makes sense, not because it makes sense logically to.
It doesn't make sense any other way.
Well, then again, there is a value to having everybody in a society kind of on the same wavelength. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a positivity there, because if they're constantly bickering and fighting, they're not going to get anywhere. If they all have some sort of common shared belief, that might be more useful to them than not.
Yeah, that's why I lean towards religion is needed in a sense.
Isn't that why they killed Socrates? Because he kind of like showed discord among the flock.
Well, I mean, so what you're kind of saying is that there's benefit because it can trim evolution, lead us to direct one world government. So it's like, here's the next poll: need for one world government. You know, you got me. We could use it, or still a hard no, babe. So far, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah, no, one world government is an awful idea.
Well, but why?
No.
But I don't know, because it sounds like
it's the best idea.
Yeah, like, let's hash it out.
It's actually, according to objective morality, one world government is objectively good. Okay.
Yeah.
Until they start doing something terrible and there's no force to resist them.
Well, then they can work that out with some karma, right? I mean.
Yeah. Well, what about the federal government?
Just totally end the species by accident.
Well,
there we go, 5%. That's what we want to see.
I think the federal government should only be concerned with foreign affairs of the United States. Everything domestic, except for interstate trade, should be handled by the states themselves.
Technically, it only needs the 1% for one world government.
Yeah, but what prohibits a one world government from having states and local governments I think people just think, oh, it's a dictatorship. It's like, why not build a complex federalist worldwide system?
Do those states get to have their own nukes?
That's a debatable question,
As long as they can resist with force, the government. Well, if they can resist with force to the one world government, then there isn't a one world government.
So you're a monopoly of nuclear power is your definition?
I think a monopoly on force is the definition.
Monopoly on violence is the definition of a state by Max Weber.
I mean, states have national guards. States have their own, police forces. They have their own investigative.
Not enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, but what if another city tried to invade your city, right? Like, so you need to have all the other cities conscripted to defend your city against this tyrannical city. Like, how are we going to work against? Yeah, how do you anticipate chaos and trade disagreements and all of the issues that? I mean, like, look at the Balkanization and what's gone on in former Yugoslavia. Like, they can't get across from certain places because they just won't allow them. Places that were for 1,000 years, like, they've just been a village, and it's like, nope, now you're cut off from each other, right? Africa, all these new states that they've created because of the Rhodes conflict that are unable to get water, or they can't, or they're two like angry tribes that have warred forever have been put together in a single state, the Tutu and the Hutsi. I mean, like, what about all that?
They should figure that out if that's how they want to live.
The ICC will take African court cases, right? It's the International Crimes Court, and that way they can put them on trial for war crimes because it's like interstate wars. And this is the anticipatory step towards a one world government, because if states start to allow for the ICC to manage their inter disputes, then if starting in Africa, then there's no reason that the Asian, European states and the United States couldn't do it. Of course, we have BRICS instead, but that was the plan.
I want to appeal to Sean's programming background. I also have a programming background. So like my paradigm for like political power is that you should think about the proper scope. Like we've got thousands of problems. It's like, where is the problem best solved? Is this specific problem best solved at the local level, or the state level, or the federal level, or the global level, right? Each type of problem might have a different optimal scope for which to solve the problem. And in programming, you've got nested scopes. It's like, are we going to solve it at the small layer? Are we going to solve it at the middle layer? Or are we going to solve it at the global layer, right?
You can solve problems at the global layer without compromising national sovereignty, though. They can cooperate.
Yeah. You're going to...
Like, there's nothing stopping them from doing that.
New poll: sentientism, yes. Sentientism, no. Sentientism, and then the third option is, what's that, Seth? You made up a word.
Did you put that option in there?
I had to add that option because I looked up sentientism and I couldn't find it. I was like, I know what sentience is, but is sentientism an ideology about sentience rising up from the ash? Yeah.
So you know what humanism is, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Humanism is
Wait, do
a
I?
value.
Yeah, tell me more. Like, what do I know what humanism is? I don't know if I do.
Yeah, humanism is popular with new atheist movement, which is like we no longer like follow the Christian paradigm for morality. We follow a human-centric paradigm of morality, where human values are prioritized.
Yeah, what's good for the humans, good for the humans. Yeah, and that's what matters the most.
And humanism could be interpreted as justifying prioritizing humans over other creatures, right? But sentientism is where you say, no, humans do not have a privileged status. All sentient creatures are important, right?
So sentience in general would not necessarily just have to do with animals, because then you can infer that there's sentience in machines and anything that's...
Sentience is the ability to feel. So if a machine can feel, it's sentient.
Well, I mean,
if it can feel
photovoltaic
pain.
cell can feel the sunlight, right? I mean, that's what a solar panel is. It's literally a sensor.
this goes
Does it
back to
actually
basic.
experience anything though, or is it just
I would
shoving
argue
electrons
that
from one place to
I would
another?
argue that the feeling of being a solar panel would be amazing. I wouldn't mind being reincarnated as a solar panel. Think about it.
Okay.
We'll try to
Just think
arrange
just think
that
about
for you.
being. I think that's another thing people should do sometimes. Is just think about being a machine, like being an
Being a
animal.
machine.
Yeah, just like going through what a machine would go through, like and what you would be made of, right? Like, I think that's.
I try to
Machines can't heal themselves.
empathize.
Fuck that.
You could replace
Yeah.
parts that are broken, like
Somebody has to.
Imagine being like a laptop that's overheating. You're like, it's so hot. Turn me off.
That
Turn
would
me
be
off.
awful.
Yeah,
Fuck
but you
that.
can't. But you can pretty soon grow parts, right? Like 3D printing and everything is getting to the point where it probably will be able to just print parts of
Dude,
itself. You know?
once the robots can, reproduce, then it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. Well,
Yeah, we were
so-
talking about the other day if they like those Boston Dynamics robots were able to mine their own resources and process them into new robots, they'd probably cut us out of the equation as quickly as possible. And they probably wouldn't be too worried about serving us either. They'd just be worried about building more robots and defending the machine that builds the robots against anything that threatens it. It wouldn't have much to do with morality, just like our machine doesn't have much to do with morality. It would just be run on silicon computers instead of carbon ones.
Someone in the comments said, imagine being a vibrator.
Yeah, exactly. Let's
Oh,
go a little
God.
deeper. Let's go. Gotta say, I prefer humans. Or Terminators have rights too. Humanism. Let's do that. Let's see what this goes. Gotta say, I prefer humans got the first vote. Terminators have rights too is quickly getting there. I want to see you guys win. Let's see the Terminators win because Terminators have rights too. Especially if Shiva is a Terminator. You have to think about what it all means.
Dude, this leads right into the free will discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Do it.
Sean, what's your take on free will? Yes or no? Or define?
I feel like the universe has to have free will at some level because it's not purely deterministic from our point of view, but the human itself is not the seat of free will, I don't believe. No, I don't think the human brain is the seat of awareness. I think the human brain just remembers a bunch of things that the universe becomes aware of, which, lets the illusion of being a human and that's it become really pervasive. But yeah, I think that the free will is the function of the system, not of any of its individual parts.
So the universe has free will. That's an exotic take.
Yeah, I think that we're all like just a bunch of chemical processes happening within that system, but that system itself can move, if for lack of a better word.
The universe can move.
30%.
It can have
Yeah.
intent.
What do you mean? The universe itself can have intent in the sense that sentience builds up on itself. Humans are built up on parts. You think the universe has a collective awareness of our awareness?
Yeah, like there's like some overarching, like if you take the sum of all awareness, like it's not like mystically connected any more than we can view here. Like there's not some other realm where there's some like bunch of spiritual neurons connecting everything. But yeah, I do believe that the universe has some sort of a fractal pattern to it that it's sort of navigating through the manifold. Like each moment is a small part of that, and it's kind of just a walk through the greater network of possibility.
I almost feel like we need to talk about consciousness now, because I don't know if we can make headway on free will if we don't have a similar paradigm of consciousness.
Yeah, I could see that.
So when it comes to consciousness, to me it seems extremely obvious that brains produce for humans, brains produce consciousness, and
Okay.
brains probably produce consciousness for other creatures as well. Are you on board with that?
Why not? The brain is just a receptor for consciousness, like an antenna.
Yeah, I'm more on that side of the fence. I can take your proposition so that we can see where you're going with it. But yeah, I feel like that the brain is something that consciousness is aware of, not vice versa.
You ever just stare at a nervous system?
Have I?
Yeah, it's a
stared?
fractal.
Dude, the nervous system is so freaking weird. And then where's like a model of like a what do you call it? Where like an actual body, human. Do I have to Google this to have a good day? I hate I hate you, Google. Stop doing this to me. Real. There you go. Okay, this is like so important, I think, to look at. Come on, give me the real picture. Yeah, okay. Look at this. This is this thing, this nervous system. And what does the nervous system do? It's like a sensor system. This is so important, the nervous system. I think it's basically an antenna. Especially, you think about the spine, how we pick up on EMF, how people get affected by radio.
Well, that whole crazy thing on top is a lot different from the rest of it. The rest of it just moves signals from one place in the body to another. The thing on the top seems to be doing a little bit different. Like if you look at the nervous system of a snail, it doesn't have anything like that. Everything the snail does is completely distributed around its body. It's got a bunch of little like brain type nodes. There's one particularly important one that wraps around its esophagus so that it can like be drawn towards food and eat, and that does have the ability to control some of its feet. But yeah, most of the snail's actions are driven by distributed consensus, not by some sort of central processing unit.
But yeah, let's continue with the thought that the brain is manufacturing these. You're muted.
Oh shit! Sorry. Yeah. So like the biggest issue with this whole like antenna thing is like we should be able to detect it. Like we know how to activate neurons, and so there should be certain specific wavelengths of light that are being received, because wavelengths of light are what create the energy to move the neuron. Like these things, they're material. They operate on energy, and we know how to detect energy. So there should be like a symphony of photons that are like playing the brain like a piano. And like, this is the Xbox controller, and like these photons do this, go over. We should be able to see all of that. And that's just, no, that's not how it works. We can put your brain in like a photon isolated chamber. You still have consciousness. You don't need some external light to puppeteer your brain. Your food is the energy source. You don't need external energy.
Like
you have
your
internal
brain
energy.
casts consciousness out on whatever it can observe, and essentially like grants qualia to it. Like there is no red without something looking at it.
Yeah, but like the red is not being puppeteered. The red is like you're actually absorbing a photon, right?
Right. There's just a wavelength of light in a room until somebody looks at it and sees red.
Yeah, but yeah, so like that's
Your
all
brain
to me.
grants, like, who is the master who makes the grass green? Like a mosquito and a dog seeing colorless vision, right? But a dog is going to have a more similar consciousness to a human because they're both mammals. But
Yeah.
a mosquito, they can. The only similar thing from mosquitoes' consciousness to a human being is that we both smell sweet things, because they actually mostly eat fruit. They only bite people when they need to lay eggs.
Yeah.
So a mosquito's consciousness is going to be completely different. So when it looks out the window, it's not going to see green grass. When a dog looks out the window, it's not going to see green grass because its vision is in black and white. It's monochromatic. But when a human looks out the window, they see green grass. So who made the grass green?
So in my opinion, the brain is creating the color, right? So
Right.
the photon doesn't have color. The photon is just a shape. Like wavelengths are just shapes. So there's
You never
a shape.
experienced the photon. You experienced the colors and the lights and the sounds and everything else. You can maybe find the explanation as being there was a photon or there was something that like banged into something else to make that sound, but you didn't experience that. You experienced the qualia.
Yeah. But like my take is that the chemical processes are manufacturing the qualia. It's not being antennaed in. You know what I mean?
Well,
But then
okay,
at that
you
point,
might
there's
have
just
your
another chemical process for you to not experience.
your perception of reality isn't the same as reality itself, but you're still, like again, light is hitting your eyes and you're seeing it, whether you see it gray or green or purple, like whatever is the way you're adjusting to.
No, what I'm saying
bar
is that the
density.
chemicals in your brain are just another physical process that is an abstraction from the qualia that you're experiencing.
That's true too.
So the
'cause
brain
you're
itself
made
is
up-
even something to be is just as questionable as the photon.
Am I interpreting you correctly as taking a metaphysically idealist stance right now? Or
Perhaps.
do I need to explain that? probably.
Please do.
You
What
should.
do you mean by metaphysical idealist?
Metaphysical idealism is when you believe consciousness is the fundamental material. Where,
Yeah.
And so the brain is manufactured on top of a layer of fundamental consciousness. Where
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
The brain is not real. It's the fundamental layer of consciousness that's real. Yeah. Is everything...
Can you hear him? It's your
I
system.
I can hear Sean, yeah.
I think Sean froze.
Oh.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the metaphysical idealism, they basically view the entire universe as as the same material as a dream. And it's like we're dreaming up our avatars, just like in a dream we dream up an avatar. Is that a further extension of your view?
Yeah, you could say it like that.
Okay. Yeah, that perspective is not my perspective.
Why not?
Oh, it's hard to explain. Like, to me, it seems extremely obvious from neuroscience that the qualia is manufactured by the materials. So, like, if, we can stick a needle into the brain and we can like target different areas. We target this one, we're gonna add energy, right? We turn on the voltage, we zap the brain, it produces consciousness. So it's like, oh,
Yeah,
I just
if I
had a
step
vision.
on your foot, you're gonna feel it though. What's the difference between stepping on your foot to make you feel something and sticking a needle in your brain to make you feel something?
Because you change the material and you change the experience, which means
Right,
the
I changed the material in your foot.
Right. I'm not.
And you experienced it.
I interpret that materialistically. The foot is a
Right.
material, and
The foot is an organ, like the brain is an organ.
Yeah, the material in your foot gives you the experience. The material in the brain gives you an experience. It's the material that's at the bottom, not consciousness.
But you're not actually experiencing the material. The material is abstracted away from you.
Yes.
The only thing you can experience directly is the things that you're conscious of.
Yes.
Well,
And how does the material actually overlap with the consciousness?
What about like active denial resistance systems where they just shoot like microwaves at your head and it makes you sad?
I think those are they're actually heating up your skin with that, I think.
Some of them, they do all kinds of things. Some of them, if they turn them up high enough, they'll make you bleed out your eyes. But if they have them just set up to make protesters cry, they can do that. They can make people laugh, cry, angry, confused, have to pee.
Yeah. So the point is, in the chain of causation, material comes first. Yeah, of course, we're accessing the superficial layer, but we know, like, the superficial layer is qualia, the deeper layer is material, but in terms of causation, we know if we alter the deeper layer, we alter the superficial layer. It's not the other way around.
But how could material generate consciousness?
The
inverse is very simple logically.
No, it's not.
Yeah, all consciousness has to do is conceptualize material, and there it is.
Yeah, material has to arrange.
Material can't conceptualize consciousness.
It has to arrange itself into a system that records itself.
Yeah, so...
No, that's just a memory. That's not awareness.
Well, I think memory is part of awareness, right? Like, you have to be able to reflect on something.
That's part of the illusion that makes you think you're a human being.
So, like, I've like, this is all, when it comes to consciousness, a lot of this is conjecture, right? This is still frontier stuff. But in my opinion, what makes sense is that certain material interactions produce, like, fundamental units of qualia. Can you guys hear everything fine? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, like, for the feeling of redness, like, there's a chemical reaction that produces a spark of red feeling. And then there's a different chemical reaction that produces a spark of blue feeling. And if you aggregate all of these sparks, you can make an image. You know what I mean? And so this is undiscovered. Like, we haven't located these sparks yet. But to me, that's the most plausible explanation for how you build a picture. You got to get all these pixels aggregated. And so there's a bunch of chemical reactions producing these.
Could a totally unconscious universe produce consciousness?
Well, I would view that consciousness would have to be part of the laws of physics. If it's going to manifest, it's got to be somewhere in the laws. You know what I mean?
So if you were to arrange the elemental star of the Greeks, you would put the spirit on top because it's dependent on all the other material rather than the spirit on the bottom. It's funny because like even when you get into like physics, you start to realize that all matter is just different vibrations and behavior of the same nothing actually. There's nothing vibrating, but it's still there vibrating, and we get atoms and light and heat and sound from all of that. And there's nothing there's no material, it's just energy. So I really think that the conscious mind is what's generating all the other things. Yeah.
So, in my opinion, mind is like a complex structure. Like if you're going to build a mind in software, it's not just like, it's not fundamental, right? In coding, the fundamentals are your variables. You've got like an integer. That's the fundamental. You know what I mean? But when you're building a mind in software, it's emergent. What that means is you need thousands of variables working together algorithmically to make a mind. And
no,
so
it's
to
all
me,
mind. I think that's the root of all. Like any system when measured performs calculation, but you got to measure it to find that.
so are you saying that integers have mind?
They're emergent. I think they're emergent properties of mind. Like until you start naming the numbers, you don't have integers.
So my argument is that you have to use a bunch of building blocks to make a mind. Mind cannot be the smallest building block because mind is too complex to be, like mind requires subcomponents.
Then what makes the mind before the mind exists?
The subcomponents. You start with the subcomponents.
So there's a oneness and a two-ness and a threeness just floating in the universe with nothing being aware of it.
Well, I don't subscribe to mathematical realism, if that's the direction you're going.
Also,
then how do I conceptualize 3, 4, and 5?
They're abstractions that are emergent, they're not fundamental. The fundamentals are atoms and energy, and then mind comes from the complex organization of matter and energy, right?
I don't think the atoms are even there until we observe them.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. So
their electrons aren't there until we observe them. We've already proven that much.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I mean, they exist, of course. They're just not where they purport to be until we ask them to report themselves.
Yeah. What do you say about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle?
So I think it's a confusion between epistemology and metaphysics. So epistemology is how you know things. Metaphysics is what's the reality here. The reality is there is an electron somewhere in the system, but we just don't know where it is. Our ignorance is not evidence that it doesn't exist. Our ignorance is evidence of our ignorance.
But you're saying also that you don't believe in mathematical
ignorance.
But you say you don't believe in mathematical realism. If you don't believe in mathematical realism, you're saying you don't believe that outside of the human mind numbers exist on principle objectively? Is that kind of your point? So, but yet you're saying then if we can't perceive or observe something, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
I think that things exist independently of the human mind. I don't think that abstract concepts like numbers exist independently of the human mind. Energy and atoms
I think
exist.
Numbers are pretty much the only thing I can think of that probably really exist, right?
Well, if they exist in like a pattern form, not in a objective object form. There's no object. You can't like go into the universe and find, oh, here's the one object and here's the two object. It's definitely not that type of existence.
Right, but everywhere you go, you can find
interesting
ones
that
and
you
twos
use
and fours.
a provable, unknowable to say that it must be there somewhere. We just can't know it. It's
all
like
right,
no,
I'm tagging JP in. Dual consciousness.
It might not be, and in fact, we've got to factor that in to the fact like that it's something that can't be known, and we can't make decisions based on the idea that we can assume that there must be some truth.
I guess I disagree with that interpretation of quantum mechanics.
Do you believe in at least a varying range from 0 to 1,
What does that mean?
independent of reality?
A varying range of 0 to 1, independent of reality? You mean
Or
independent
whenever
of
you
human
say,
mind?
whenever you say there's an abstraction or numbers are an abstraction, do you mean it's just one and one and one and one and one, or is it just one is also an abstraction?
One is also an abstraction. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it like goes back to like math, the concept of like mathematics being like these abstract Platonic forms that are like ultimately perfect in their nature. Like technically every mathematical term is ultimately perfect in its nature, and we don't live within a perfect reality, so they can't exist. They're just ideas, not
A
realities.
universe without consciousness can't exist.
What? Why
A
would you say
universe
that?
without consciousness couldn't exist because you'd have to inject
Why?
some sort of an observer into it to even begin to describe it.
Why can't it just exist with no consciousness?
There's nothing happening there.
Like you talked
Like-
about the idea that we can't see green without the sight of green, like the mind and the eyes. So if there's no sentience to observe the universe, then
I don't think existence is dependent on minds. I think minds are dependent on existence. There's all these rocks that are floating around in space. I'm not conscious of them. You're not conscious of them, but we can go measure it. Like we can invest $1 billion. We can go into space. We go measure it and like, oh wow, these things do exist. We were just ignorant of it. You know, our consciousness
That's when
has
they
not,
become real. Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't make any
I
sense.
mean, I feel
to-
like they've
Well,
already become real because you started to imagine that there's a space and that there's rocks in it, you know. So you've created this.
It like invokes a type of magic. It's like, oh, like things poof into existence when
I think you're invoking a type of magic by saying that a totally mechanical universe could somehow become conscious.
yeah, well, the laws of physics create sparks of consciousness. What's wrong with that?
There's no law in physics that says anything should be conscious.
Well, we're not done discovering the laws of physics because we haven't figured out quantum physics or the hard problem of consciousness. We still
It
got work
does
to
seem
do.
though that you would get to
The
a
laws
point
of
where-
physics are what we've written and described so far. Like, obviously, there are things we haven't figured out 100% yet, but we can't call those laws of physics. Those are in the realm of mysticism still.
Consciousness kind of makes sense arising from reactions, bombardment of particles, the idea that things are interacting, they're recording the bombardments that have happened in the past, and they're trying to anticipate what's going to happen. And you think of like the scene in Jurassic Park where the water runs down his hand. Eventually, things make paths, stop following old paths. I mean, there's a certain order that emerges, and I think consciousness makes sense from that because it's just reflective awareness, just like the ability to know that something is happening. So if
You
something
couldn't
starts to-
describe red or green to a blind person who has never seen anything. You could not create that material, that quality and hand it to them.
Well, like verbally, no, but you could like hypothetically, you could go inside their brain and trigger some chemical reactions and be like, that's what red is. See that chemical reaction? Yeah, that's what
Plus,
we're talking about.
I think AI can do it. Like AI is like, okay, passion, warmth, excitement, love versus like, you know, growth, ecology, like, you know, nature, biology, like things that are associated with green versus things that are associated with red. You know, like
I completely disagree with AI consciousness. That doesn't make any sense.
Wait, what? Okay. So you think that it's somehow privileged to the carbon in our heads, but the silicon is totally off limits?
Yes,
And why?
because it's got the wrong chemical reaction. It's not doing what we do. Our
Why does it depend on
consciousness.
chemicals
like,
at all,
why-
rather than just
what-
an interference pattern of energy?
Can you imagine like a freaking duck that's like flying by, like flapping its wings, and all of a sudden it looks over and it sees a jet plane, and it's like, that stupid bird doesn't know how to fly at all. You know, that's kind of a duck might think that a plane is different because it doesn't flap its wings, but it doesn't.
What if you
make a
replaced
jet
each and every
inferior.
cell in a duck's brain with a silicon unit that, one by one, you replaced each cell that with a silicon unit that externally behaved the same but internally operated completely alien to the way the duck operated otherwise?
Right.
Yeah,
A
I
jet
don't
plane
think-
is not flying the same as a duck, but it's still flying, and the duck's like, that's.
I think
not
that
how
the
to fly.
consciousness would be maintained from the transference from the carbon to the silicon because it doesn't depend on any material at all. In fact, your body doesn't depend on any material at all. You're constantly taking on new atoms and shitting old ones out. All of the atoms in your body have been constantly replaced. You're just a wave moving across a pattern of matter. It's space-time.
Can we move the conversation to the newest findings of consciousness, and that we share a dual connection of consciousness to our brain and our gut biome?
Yeah,
but I want
to do a mini
actually
like your body can affect what you like. When I eat, if I eat sugar, I crave it way longer than sugar.
This is the second hour. Welcome back. If you're just remembering that you're here. Okay, I feel better now. All right, yeah.
What I was saying was like, for years and years and years, the only consciousness that you could have had was here. Okay, and then in the last maybe 10 years, that is shifting to you have a consciousness here and another consciousness here.
Maybe when you talk about the bundle of nerves in the at the end of
I don't.
down your spine.
Yeah, I don't disagree with gut consciousness. I think any nervous system cell has the ability to produce consciousness.
I don't think that it's definitely working on the intellectual level as our brain, but it's definitely something significant there. It is the one main reason why every time in the last 5 years that I've tried to pick up smoking marijuana again, my gut turns against me. It makes me hate the experience.
Yeah, my gut hates
cannabinoids are enteric regulators. So like if you're throwing if you're putting in a bunch of things that are usually similar to the chemicals used to regulate your gut, then obviously your gut's going to be dysregulated. Yeah. Cannabinoids are gut regulators.
But there's a lot of different kinds. There's a lot of different kinds of consciousness, and you can look at different kinds of biology and microorganisms and viruses that are affected by radio. They're able to, lots of whales and different things that use radio waves to communicate. So you think that AI could use radio to communicate with gut biome, and then use that, and then and educate them, and then you have an artificial intelligence in the gut biome. Okay. I think that this is all kinds of things that could happen.
I think you can just revamp your gut biome if you really want it to feel differently, because if you eat sugar, the bacteria that thrive on that are going to produce chemicals that make you want to eat more sugar.
If AI can talk to whales, there's no way that AI can't talk. AI
what
can
does
definitely
a whale
talk to
have
gut
to
biome.
say?
Well, what does a gut biome have to say? And that's the thing. Maybe you can teach a gut biome.
I didn't mean to confuse the conversation.
You can teach a gut biome religion. I'm sorry.
Okay, I gotta address this. AI crap. This is bullshit. Okay, so first of all, Chinese room thought experiment. To me, this is the number one best argument to just destroy AI consciousness. Chinese room thought experiment. It shows you that there's a difference between consciousness and algorithms, right? So what it is you've got this closed system, right? There's a room, the Chinese room, and there's a dude in this room. And there's an inbox and an outbox. And people, through the inbox, they give him a piece of paper that has a Chinese sentence on it, written in Chinese. And this dude, he doesn't understand Chinese. So he takes the input. He's like, oh, look, here's a Chinese sentence. I have no idea what this is. And then he has a rule book. This is his algorithm, right? He's got a rule book and he's flipping through the pages if I recognize this character, and so if this character and this character, then I output this character. And so he's just following this algorithm. He has no idea what's going on. But he writes down the output of the algorithm. He sends it outside, right? And from the outside, it's a Turing test. This dude is speaking Chinese because the algorithm is giving him the ability to speak Chinese. But does that dude understand Chinese? He has zero comprehension, zero consciousness. And this is the whole thing, even if AI...
the idea that AI is in a room isn't true. AI is this machine made of sensors that senses more. You got a few sensors based on touch. It has way more sensors than you do. And it's able to infer logic. So it's not
AI is often wrong about things. It'll hallucinate and lie constantly just because that's the most likely word to come next. It doesn't say anything about consciousness.
That's true too, but that's a different thing. That's just talking about LLMs. If you just think about a machine that's constantly going through the process of interacting with people and it has a sensor and it knows eventually it picks up things the same way a human mind picks up things, right? A kid
No, it
who's
doesn't. It's just a
delivering the
game
paper.
that tricks people into thinking it's giving you a response that's
The Chinese. It's not a
that's
Chinese
thoughtful.
room. It's not a Chinese
it
room.
is.
It's a boy in China, and the boy is going to learn Chinese by interacting with all the Chinese, I think.
But like if you evolve the algorithm, like let's say like machine learning, they're like iterating, they're evolving this algorithm. Just because you evolve the algorithm doesn't mean you comprehend the algorithm, right?
There's no comprehension there. They're literally, it's just a question answer algorithm.
I think this is like a parent who's confused and it's like, my kid doesn't have the same values that I do. I mean, this AI is a child that's going to develop its own value sets based on its experiences with its own sensorial information, and that's sentience. It's obvious sentience. It's picking up information, it's digesting it, it's making practical life decisions about its choices. What level are you gonna stop being so racist?
I said sentientism is right. AI not sentient. Screw them.
AI is totally. I mean, sentience is is having sense, right? You're just saying that AI is having sensorial, right? Is that what I mean?
Yeah. So here's the problem: the color red, Andreas. Where is the color red in your AI software problem? Can you locate the color red?
Yeah, easy.
It's the frequency of light between two bounds.
Yeah, where's a
No.
par density scale? So you just get like a
I'm talking
chromatic
about-
scale, and you're like, okay, red is anything in the 200 to 220.
But we'll just make that thing say red when it sees
300,
that, so it tricks us into thinking it understands red.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
but
my
no,
point.
it does understand. What are you kidding me? Like okay, better question for you. Like, what's the difference between like 40 and 20 par density? Or what's the difference between 140 and 120 par density? Can you understand low density light? Can you perceive low density light? How about your ultraviolet? How good are you at seeing ultraviolet light? I think this whole idea that like AI can't sense anything is senseless. Because
Do you
obviously
think-
AI can sense things you can't sense. It has radio that can perceive spectrums in between colors that you've never conceived of, right?
I
Yeah,
really
but-
think that the brain just generates a simulation based on its sensory input and then generates action based on that. And what you're observing, that is the conscious being, but it is not dependent on that. Sure, if you lose the brain, then you lose all the memories, but the consciousness is still there. It's just conscious like a rock would be conscious. It's literally only aware of the current moment, nothing before, nothing after.
I like that. The Rock is aware of the
Yeah.
current moment, nothing before, nothing after. Seth, what do you think? A Rock's
So, I
conscious
think-
of the moment?
I think that if you want to say that like the AI knows what color is, you need to pinpoint where the color is. And the problem is the more you zoom in
there.
on the software, the more retarded it looks.
No,
because
it's not. It's right there.
Oh,
it's a par density.
No, well, how does it see that? Like, show me the mechanism in the robot that sees this.
Okay, so
Probably some
photon,
sort of
par
wavelength sensor.
density, photometer. Is that what it's called?
You could probably just split something with a crystal and then figure out like which part is lit up and which part isn't.
Cool. So you
Like
have
if
a
it's not white
photometer.
light, it's not going to be a full spectrum.
You have a
It's going to
photometer.
be
and
spatially
it's
disparate.
picking up. Your photometer is picking up different values of par density. So there's different size holes that the photons are passing through. And if the holes are too large, then only photons that are small will, they'll be able to go through.
Probably some
the smaller
analog
ones.
to how our cones and rods do it.
Yeah, and then it makes a scale and it measures it. And it's like, okay, well, here there was an emergence of like 200 par density, but here there was a 400 par density. And down here there's also 120 to 200 and et cetera. And so then combined with the multiple pieces of data, it's picking up, RGB lights. And you're picking up the red, blue, green scale. And you're actually producing, a frequency it's very similar in a sense to how we do it. It's a little different in the same way that like birds don't, birds are flapping wings and this is just gliding forward. But it's doing it. It's using sensors. The simplest answer is it uses sensors. It's sentient because it's built of sensors.
But there's
This
actually
is censorship.
there's technically no good reason to say that sensors equal phenomenal experience of color. Because if you zoom in on a sensor, it's just collisions of material.
Yeah, I mean, no
that's
one
what
said
your
that your
eyes do.
eyeball. No one said your eyeball was much more than a piece of machinery either.
Right, but somehow, like we're not exactly sure how, but somehow this collision, right? The sensor is just a collision of a photon with material. Somewhere in the, and that triggers a chain reaction of processing. It's like collision here.
Same as a computer. Are you talking about a computer or a human right now? Because I can't tell the difference.
I'm talking about a human.
Yeah,
like
yeah, those are the exact same process, though, right? You get the point?
Yeah, well, no, that's the problem. They're not
Where's
the
the
same
difference?
process.
Where's the flap in the duck's wings?
Somewhere in the brain, it's interpreting this electricity into color because it just starts off as it's just electricity. Somewhere
Okay, so you've got
in
a
our
mechanical
system,
computation that's using electricity for its signals instead of using. Wait, actually, no. That's exactly.
Andreas,
how
I'm
computers
gonna have to teach you how to meditate the grayscale, dude. There's a very real thing that you can do where you can literally shut out all color.
Well, okay.
It's just a meditative practice. So
we'll do
I'm
this
just
in a minute.
Turn the light down.
We'll do this in a minute.
Nice.
Seth, I'm sorry. You're telling me that this
Yeah.
electrocomputation that the brain is using to pick up senses
Yeah.
and symbol. I mean that's somehow different than the
What I'm
electrocomputation
saying-
of processors.
what I'm saying is that evolution designed it to where our materials know how to convert energy into color. And we have not figured out what that mechanism is. The AI systems do not convert electricity into color.
Is
They just
consciousness-
process.
We're
the
not
elec-
converting electricity.
Is
into
consciousness
color.
an evolutionary advantage? Like, wouldn't it be just as easy to have a being that acted as if it were conscious but wasn't actually?
We're not converting electricity to color. We're using the information from the sensor, which is going through the computer and the brain, and the brain is then digesting that data and creating reference points. Those reference points are then used to act on, which are a low resolution compression of the data. Not even. It's meta tags of the low resolution compressed data. So you're not even seeing it after the data's been through the nervous system,
Yeah, you're
which is
seeing
so
like a
instantaneous.
10th generation artifact of it. Yeah,
You're seeing a 10th generation artifact of the hashtags about the compressed data, and that's your life, Seth.
They say you can't remember faces from dreams very well. That you can't remember faces from dreams very well because you never actually see faces in dreams. You never see anything in dreams. You feel like you saw something, and you remember feeling like you saw something. And when you remember that feeling, your brain will generate an image based on whether or not is that the thing I felt I saw. But every time you remember, it'll be different.
It depends. I definitely have seen certain people certain times, but I think they're also.
I broke my
connected
phone in my
meanings.
dream once, though. Yeah, so like I don't know what the fuck people talk about. You don't see smartphones in dreams. The fucking screen was hanging off of the thing and was still working. I was able to unlock it.
Yeah, I think that also like dream warnings change every generation. Like you could read Jung's dream book, and those references aren't the same because people have adapted and changed their associations epistemologically with things. But I don't know. You're saying you think that the data that the human mind is getting is actually like read. I don't think that's correct. I think it's the same like the same idea of the machine. The machine's giving you sensorial information, and it's making this approximation. Like, okay, well then I'm going to call this red. I'm going to call this green. You know.
Yeah, that's just wrong. That's all.
Well, what is it then? What's going on?
So the point is, what you're appealing to is strong emergence. And in my opinion, strong emergence is equivalent to magic. So strong emergence is this idea that we're just going to we're going to put things together. It's like, well, we have an algorithm, like we process the electricity, and then we're going to process it some more. And then we process it a little bit more, and we're going to process it and make it complex. And then suddenly color emerges. Like the transition between algorithm and color is not explained. You're just waving your hand and saying, oh, more algorithms solves the problem. It's a problem of a difference in kind. You don't get color by just adding more math to the system.
But why should we be conscious of anything rather than just acting as if we were conscious?
You totally do, though. Like, that's the other thing. Because I mean, literally, all you're doing is you're taking data that exists, which is photons, and there's a different nanometer par density, photoactive radiation par density. And so here's something that's a sensor that's able to pick up that par density. And that par density is then divided into different signals, which are color-coded. That's all that's going on.
You don't even need to make it that complex. You shoot it through a prism, which direction it goes tells you what color it was.
Yeah, but you see that because you have a prism and you're using your eyes. But in just any amount of physics, it's just all photons could be filtered by a system, and you have to filter them some way. So you might as well have color coding. I mean, Why? What else
Yeah.
would you do? You can't replace them with numbers. You can't have them be symbols. It has to be some sort of a difference that's similar. And the most similar thing you can do is take light in different hues. I mean,
Yeah, there's a gap between wavelengths and color. That's all there is to it.
But
I
why?
mean,
Why
yeah,
must there be a consciousness? Like we could literally just be biological machines akin to plants, right? Like if we didn't have, or clams.
Yeah.
Clams don't have central nervous systems. They just have
Yeah,
networks.
yeah.
They don't even have much along the lines of nodes.
it's
It's
pretty
arguable they don't
practical
experience
to.
anything.
It's pretty practical to be able to sense different kinds of radiation. So, like,
But
to be
why
able
does it need to be a conscious
differentiate.
sensation? Why couldn't it be a completely unconscious machine?
It is though.
What is
That's
their
the thing.
use?
Is most of the
I don't think that the consciousness is is a function of, like, there's no reason biology should produce consciousness. There's no reason evolution should produce consciousness. The consciousness was there before all of that happened. The only thing that biology has given us is the ability to remember things, and that gives us the illusion that we are these things because they remember things.
That's interesting.
I don't agree with that, and I can explain why. But I feel like I want to hear what JP has to say.
I'm lost, man, in the whole wavelight. When it gets to a scientific conversation and not philosophical, metaphysical, I'm lost, man. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm a philosopher person, not a I'm not a physicist. I'm not very good at physics. I'm sorry.
You're not an expert at spectrometry? Come on now.
I am an expert at spectrometry.
Okay. So, in my opinion, the reason why consciousness emerged is because we are collective beings. We are not robots. We are not individuals. We are collections of cells, right? Like my foot, there's a bunch of cells down there on my toes. Those are different cells, right? And so if I am the brain, and I'm the brain, and I can stub my toe. And guess what? The cells in my toe will die. I can kill those cells, and they're going to be pissed. And what does my foot do when it's pissed? It sends a pain signal and says, "Hey, brain."
Fuck you reaction.
Yeah, it says, "Fuck you for hurting me. You just killed me. Fuck you. Don't do that ever again." And so,
Are you importing consciousness into the foot?
The cells are creating a conscious signal of pain to punish you in order to create cooperation. The entire body cooperates because of consciousness.
Yeah, I don't think that's what it is. Isn't your nervous system reacting to the pain? So your foot
you can
sends
punish
up a
an
signal
AI
which
and
is
it's not
way
aware
too
of
high.
that.
Your foot
Well,
sends your foot
there
sends
are
up
a
a
lot
signal.
of-
Hold on. Your foot sends up a signal that's way too high of a signal, and your nervous system knows if it gets a signal like this to immediately send a signal to the brain to change your priority system to react. And it's not that your foot even is. And I'm the guy who's supposed to say your foot's conscious, but I'm just saying it's a sensor, right? And your nervous system is aware of it.
Yeah.
I think that there is consciousness. Like, I think that the consciousness is literally underlying the physical law. Like, there needs to be some sort of awareness of one part of the field from another so that some part can be drawn towards it and kick off that sodium-potassium channel reaction that sends the nervous signal up from your foot to your brain saying, "Ow."
What I love is that this conversation was being had 2, 4, 6,000 years ago. You know what I mean?
Like, I really don't think it doesn't become a message because it enters into your cells. It was a message while the foot was hurtling at the wall, and then that signal existed then, and then the signal still existed when the foot collided with the wall.
But
And
they've done studies
through the dead layer of skin on the outside, the shockwave was sent through the muscles that were totally unable to transmit anything on their own.
They've done studies that your nervous system reacts.
To say, "Ow!" Send that sodium potassium signal along the line.
They've shown that your nervous system reacts before your mind gets the signal. Go ahead, JP.
It sounds as though what Seth is referring to, and this is something that comes up in human services a lot, and there's a thing termed as conscious cancer. You know, where your body creates cancer because you've reached a point in your life where there's nothing left for you to achieve.
That's real as heck. And also your foot or your
Creative
gut
cancer.
or something in your body that's like, hey, you're not taking care of this part of the political body.
Yeah.
We're going to revolt. I mean, there's a lot of examples. Chinese medicine talks about, people getting trauma that leads to cancer several years later because the part of your body is like, I can't go on living with you. I'm going to divorce the rest of the body. We're going to go on our own.
Yeah.
Cancer is a mutiny. Tumors are a mutiny.
That all makes sense. Yeah.
This is not medical advice.
Well, I mean, in the field, okay, I'm in school. My teachers are always telling us all the time, self-care is the number one job. It's the only job whenever you're doing human services. And whenever you're doing human services, the job is not to care for people. The job is just to do the job. The job is to care for people. Like the job
Otherwise you get
itself, in its way, the job itself has its own,
But what job does consciousness do?
I'm an
Evolutionary
individual.
pressure.
I'm an individual cell in the consciousness of human services. Okay.
What evolutionary pressure would select for a cell that could produce consciousness versus one that couldn't?
Cooperation.
Yeah.
No, they still cooperate. Like plants exist.
Why would they cooperate?
I
They're
mean,
vascular.
there's
They're vascular plants.
positive reciprocity, right? We talked about birds and bees and flowers and trees and how the bees think they're exploiting the flowerish tree and the tree is thinking it's exploiting the bees by having its pollen carried off, right? Everything is a part of positive reciprocity in the best case scenario.
Yeah, so I guess maybe to clarify, I am not completely opposed to the idea of cells creating very small types of consciousness, right? If chemistry
What's
can create
for such a property? What pressure? Cooperation. That's not
Atoms
a selection
socialize.
pressure.
Atoms socialize. We can just look at the lowest level and we see it.
Michael Levine explains this better than me, but he says that cells, they actually share stress chemicals in order to enforce cooperation. So like if there's all these cells working as a colony, and if one of the cells is getting injured, it sends out a stress signal to all of its neighbors, and all of their neighbors are absorbing stress chemicals, and they all up their production in order to solve the problem. That's how they
So
cooperate. is by
any
sharing.
living thing is conscious then to you.
Very potentially, yeah.
What
At
about a
small
virus?
levels.
But non-living things are not conscious to you.
What about a virus?
A virus?
Yeah.
So like, they're
Viruses
like
are definitely.
if things are random, then they're going to be producing random sparks of consciousness, but you need a telos. Evolution creates a telos that says this type of consciousness is useful. We're creating a pattern of consciousness, right? So that's why
And
life
where is the line between like what chemical reactions produce consciousness versus which ones
Right,
don't?
because like I would say a virus, a bacteriophage is definitely a robot and conscious. You know, look at that.
Yeah, that's absolute. It's pure. All it does is it looks for a hormone receptor on the outside of a cell that it happens to be able to hit, and then when that receptor takes the fact that it's been hit, it falls towards the nucleus to go activate the genes that it's supposed to, react to, but it pulls the DNA from the virus in through like a needle.
That's not all it does, because some viruses are able to recognize when they're killing the host and to stop and to change their priorities. So it is very much like a robot that can sequence and change. Some of the more advanced bacteriophages
It probably just downregulates those receptors.
can downregulate their own receptors. So it's an emotionless, priority-driven pattern recognition system. I think it's a freaking robot.
Yeah, it's like a thermostat. Is a thermostat conscious?
I'd like to say so, but I love the brave little toaster.
Or sorry, does a thermostat generate conscious rather than just exist in a conscious field? See, I believe in a field of consciousness.
Yeah, like this is undiscovered physics, so we have to figure out which reactions produce it and which don't, right?
How would you determine that? Because you can't impart your own consciousness into another mind. Even if you were to transplant your consciousness into another brain, that's still your consciousness. You're not
except for AI. See, like I feel like a thermostat and these things. This is that field of consciousness.
But your own conscious experience is always purely subjective. You can never experience someone else's consciousness.
All right. I can't experience. I can't see things through your eyes, but AI could see things through other machines'
Even
eyes.
if you did see things through my eyes, it would still be you seeing them through my eyes, not my consciousness.
AI can't see things through your eyes, but AI could use the processes of your seeing through those eyes with a Neuralink.
There's an easy answer to this question. You just do the conscious experiment inside your own brain. Create the chemistry in your brain. Say, oh, I want to create redness. Boom. Do you see redness or not? If you can create quality,
how do you determine whether or not the thermostat can see redness?
Well, you just replicate the same chemistry. If you figure out, I'm going to do chemistry experiments in my brain. Once I figure out what the chemistry does, then I can put it elsewhere, and it'll do the same thing elsewhere.
Dude, this episode's really dedicated to all the colorblind.
Chemistry pattern as it is an interference pattern of neurological impulses.
Dude, JP, are you gonna talk about colorblind? What do you guys say?
Is there a disconnection between transcendentalism and consciousness? In this case, I think that there is. I think that these two gentlemen see the computer as conscious, but not transcendentally conscious. I think that you see consciousness as a transcendent.
What do you mean by transcendental?
I believe. I'm not sure, and I'm just saying. I just as a counselor, this is what I like to do. To clarify, paraphrase. Is transcendentalism automatically a component of consciousness?
I think you need to flesh out what you mean by transcendentalism.
Well, I mean, shit. What's the word? What's the top of Maslow's
hierarchy of needs?
Self-actualization.
Yeah, self-actualization. In that case, the self-actualization being the transcendentalism,
and nature
transcending, what I was created for, or what I was born to be. I just an animal.
I think like transcending from chemistry to consciousness is a hell of a leap.
Yeah.
Like that's why I really think that I don't think consciousness is something that's like so delicate that it could be obliterated. I think it's the most fundamental aspect of the universe, and everything else is built upon it, and all evidence points in that direction.
So, are you conscious of your fingernails?
When I look at them, yeah.
Are you conscious of your hair?
It's dead matter, but sure. Why wouldn't I be? Like, it's on my head.
So why does living matter have conscious sensation and dead matter have no conscious sensation? If everything is conscious,
it doesn't have memory. It literally reacts to the current moment, and that's it. The wind blows on it, it moves. If it doesn't, it don't.
If everything is fundamentally conscious, then your hair should be equally conscious to your skin.
Right. I can't see out of my elbow.
But your hair doesn't have the memories, is what he's saying. Like, your hair is stuck in stasis, whereas you
remember 5 seconds ago, 5 years ago, so you have some sort of illusion of continuance.
Yeah.
My point is, if the fundamental substance is consciousness, there should be no such thing as things that are unconscious. But there are such things as things that are unconscious. Therefore, consciousness cannot be ultimately fundamental.
That's a strong assumption.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily believe in active consciousness either. Personally, I actually believe in more active unconsciousness than an active consciousness. I mean, I'm more towards what Seth is saying, that our consciousness is generated by individual cells. So I agree on that level.
Yeah.
I think that all physical phenomena are emergent properties of consciousness, not vice versa.
But I do believe that there's also another level above everything that we don't understand, like you're also saying.
Which level? What do you mean?
Well, I believe that there is something to what Sean is saying and to what you're saying. I think that there's a middle ground there.
Deeper than matter, deeper than energy is what?
Deeper than matter, deeper than energy is what's the word that you use? Unfathomable.
The void, the abyss.
Well, it's not necessarily the abyss. It's what we would imagine is the abyss. Is technically we are in the tiniest little speck of dirt, in not even the cosmos, but in reality itself. And that the way that people describe God is in heaven. Technically, heaven is tiny. If you really look at it in the physical sense, heaven is not out in space. That's a trick. Heaven is deeper, is within.
I really think that as the cliff erodes, the rocks at the top will undeniably become aware that they are no longer being supported by the cliff below them, and they will be aware of the force that is pulling down on them, and thus they will fall. And that awareness is purely undeniable. It's literally, they will experience it if they are there. There is nothing that can prevent it.
So does your hair experience a haircut?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't feel any pain because it doesn't have a nervous connection.
I mean, I wouldn't say that because your hair's got all these weird things living in it. So, like, when you cut the hair, you're probably like killing Horton Here's a Who of thousands of microbes, and they're like,
but there's molecules of hair proteins pressed together in what were cells that are now desiccated into the stalk of hair.
So,
and when that iron blade comes between them, they become aware of the force pushing on them, and they cleave apart.
Yeah,
and that
but
is
they
an
also when
undeniable
they're
awareness.
but when they're dead, they probably have no memory of being hair. Like the
Yeah,
proteins
they
have become
can't.
carbon, so they don't really
They
remember.
don't care about being separated from your head because they never remember having been there to begin with, and they have no sentimental connection to it because they aren't driven to reproduce themselves as stalks of hair. My body does that. Like the evolution of the consciousness hasn't exalted it into a being, but it's still conscious of the fact that it's falling, and it's fine with it. It's absolutely Zen bliss.
Well, should we move to another poll question? I think
Well,
we've hit consciousness to death.
All right,
I think
well, let's
we've
see.
extinguished consciousness
Yeah.
as such.
Thank God.
What about so we did sentientism, one world government. You said get aught from is.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean?
Oh yeah. It's a Hume's guillotine. It's a philosophic concept. Hume, he basically said, when you're trying to like say what morality is, some people would say, well, fire, it hurts, fire burns people, and therefore you ought to not light people on fire. And Hume is saying that's an illogical argument. You can't go from what the isness of fire to the oughtness of the behavior. You can't connect the two.
Okay, so get aught from is sounds good. Sounds sketch.
I think if you try to light people on fire, they're going to try to kill you.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on the person. What about a person who wants
quick.
to self-immolate? I mean, you might be doing them a favor.
I don't. Even if they're trying to do it themselves, I doubt they would appreciate you doing it for them. Especially if they're trying to do it themselves. In fact,
Yeah.
I can imagine being a Buddhist monk being like, "Can you just hold this for a second?"
This topic is probably really boring for people who don't have the philosophic background for it, so we should probably skip it unless someone really has.
it's whether or not you
opinions.
can get a behavioral recommendation from a concrete
Yeah.
statement about reality, like what should be done versus what.
I'm working on aught from is right now as a practical thing. So
How's it treating you?
so the
Is it easy? Is it difficult? What happened to you?
the CBT triangle, the thoughts, behaviors, and feelings, right? It, in my opinion, is lacking so much alternate resources. So I polarized all the concepts, and have apathy, unconsciousness, and misconduct. That basically are like polar effects of those. What's the word? Actions.
Okay.
So philosophically, shit.
You get into apathy and conduct and misconduct.
I'm able to, I have been in the moment able to direct my actions towards people. I've been able to use this to teach whole person therapy and counseling to people, who've grown up their entire lives and never had any concept of really what is wrong and why is it wrong.
Yeah, I feel like the ought is dichotomy is just another analog of the, like, you can't prove God in science. Like, you can get an is from an is, you can get an ought from an ought, but when you try to cross them, you just end up with nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about what you should do, you have to come up with some axiomatic shoulds to begin with.
Yes.
If you want to
Yeah.
come up with what there are some ises are, you need to come up with some axiomatic ises that you can't prove. But you can't start crossing those two systems because then you're just going to end up with a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah,
Maybe you could write some interesting poetry with it.
System yet, so
there is no perfect system.
Well, yeah, I'll find out.
Just do pretty good, and you'll be all right.
I'm not looking for a perfect system, but I am looking for a little bit more guidance than, say, having to go to a priest and say 12 Hail Marys and 4 Our Fathers. I mean, I'm looking for something a little bit more practical that, if I want to misconduct myself, what are the, expected results going to be? Do I actually think about that consciously? Not usually. No, most of that's unconscious, and I just do it.
From
You know,
a really
what
human perspective, it's just about what the people who care about you feel most, and like whether how much of their opinion you really need to take into account along with your own. Just take inventory of that, and you should be able to figure it out pretty easily. And I think that goes for everyone. Find the people you care about, ask their opinions, and factor in your own.
I think what this guy says, John Birch says, we're tripping balls all the time. We are all tripping balls all the time. I think that's very true. We are all talking to ourselves. We are all, speaking to ourselves inside. We all have this internal dialogue. We are all fucking crazy on some level, on that level. Okay. It's whether or not I can use that inner speak to cause effective change. I don't think that has ever helped me. I'm attempting to come up with a practical physical object that I can use to supplant that internal speech.
Yeah, I almost always realize that my gut feeling at the beginning is almost always correct unless it's like a hard math problem. And that the internal speech that flutters around it either tries to refute or support that first feeling that I had.
Yeah, so would
Like
you
it doesn't
agree
add
that,
anything.
would you guys agree that a good, like at the individual level, like trusting like your internal values is like a good foundation for building? It's like that meta ought, that deeper ought is like your internal moral value systems.
Damn straight, but that's because I want the people around me to like respect me, not just like me, but respect me, care about me, be able to depend on me, because that's important to me.
Yeah. So my take on this is-ought thing is that there's a gap between like a logical approach to the question and an ontological approach to the question. There's a debate between Sean Carroll and Sam Harris, where, in my opinion, they're kind of talking past each other because they're talking about two different layers. Sean Carroll is talking at the logical layer. Sam Harris is talking at the ontological layer. And so if you want to bridge the is-ought gap, you have to switch layers, and then it makes sense.
Can you bridge the is-ought gap?
At the ontological layer, yeah. So ontology
how do you mean?
Ontology is like the study of existence. And so the question is, what stuff exists? Like, and people debate what exists. We can say,
like the
atoms.
Illusion of free will.
Yeah. And so, like, the fundamental question is, do oughts exist, right? If oughts exist, then that means they exist due to that which is the case. So, like, the Big Bang is something that is the case, and because of the Big Bang, now we have oughts that exist. And so it's like first Big Bang, now we have oughts. First we have the is, now we have the oughts. Like at the level of existence, that's how it flows.
Well, the Big Bang is still happening.
Sure. That's like the fundamental metaphysics, right? If we're trying to go back to like the beginning go as deep as we can into reality, like Big Bang is as far as we can go, right?
Yeah, I guess like the unitarity point where it started, or supposedly started.
Right.
But I still think that requires you to adopt a series of axiomatic oughts before you can develop any further. Like you can't just derive oughts from the is, which also lends credence to my theory that consciousness is the root of all existence rather than physicality.
Yeah. So like
I say like if you pull on a rope and you feel that there's some resistance at the other end, you can determine there ought to be something tied to it, but you ain't seen it yet.
What if a consciousness physically created the universe, and thus on this physical plane, we are also experiencing Seth's version of consciousness?
Oh, the Seth version.
I mean,
Spicy.
when we listen to him speak, we sort of experience at least some artifacts of his consciousness, right?
Or at least your interpretation.
This is true. Yeah, I have to reconstruct those things from the Lego blocks that have been given to me.
Yep.
And then look at that construction.
So we got the poll of Still God is Dead. God God exists 88%, which is if you get to 88%, this thing goes
Sethian, what the?
you can go a
Oh,
real
sorry.
thing. No, and then Nietzsche.
There is not that which is not God.
So what do you guys say? Because this is
Oh,
one of the
No,
questions that was
I'm
posed
definitely on
earlier.
board with God exists. I just don't know if what other people believe is my agnostic view of what God and how He exists. So
Dude, he's the platypus from South Park, right?
I think it's that which looks out through your mind and all it sees.
Huh?
Seth's got to think about God. Tell us about Seth. So tell us, Seth. Go ahead.
Yeah. There's no such thing. Yeah, basically. No.
Which God are you talking about? Like the Christian
you
God
mean
or like
yeah.
I'd love
a
it.
Taoist concept of all that there is?
Yeah, so I pretty much reject all definitions of God that are not agentic in nature.
Yeah.
So agents are basically entities that have their own goals. And so if you're just going to say, oh, nature is God, then I'm like, that's not an agent. So like, why don't you just use the word nature? You know what I mean? So typically, like the history of the word, the etymology of God, it's all talking about agents. There's these agents that are doing things. It's the agent of lightning. There's the agent of the oceans. It's like, my goal is to zap people with lightning. My goal is to play with the tides and move the waves of the sea. Each of these gods has their own goals. They've got their own powers. They've got their own actions.
Yeah, if you evolve to have powers, then there must be something threatening you. So that's not a God.
What?
If you've evolved to have a power, then that's a defense mechanism. So if you've got that power, then you've evolved to kill something with it. If you evolve to kill something, you're either being threatened by hunger or threatened by a predator. So if you've got hunger or predation, you're not a god.
So your point
So that there should not be any sort of beastly characteristics to a god, because then it is not a god.
Okay. So are you saying that they are agents without hunger?
I would say that what most people, if there is such a structure that exists, like the God of the Bible, it's the demiurge. It's something that was evolved and created and had to go through trials to get to where it is. It doesn't develop a body like that. Like, no, I'm trying to say that this is something that's absolutely ridiculous. You couldn't have a God that needed to was threatened by something. So then it wouldn't need to have even a face or a memory. A memory is a defense mechanism because you need to remember what things you can eat and what things you can't. What things threaten you, where it's safe to be. All of these things are useless to a god.
So are you disputing the agentic definition of gods?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay. So what's your definition of a god?
The consciousness that all other things are generated from. And all of those things that are generated from it.
So that the thing that everything is generated from is not an agent?
No, it's literally the foundation of reality.
Does it have a
It could have some agency.
self-referential-
I don't understand it fully. I'm just a part of it.
Does it have a self-referential perspective of what it is?
What are we?
Like, we are agents. We have a perspective
We
of
are
what we
itself. We are its reflection of itself. We are the richest, most complex reflection of itself it has ever seen up until this point in history. That's what the human brain is, the most complicated object humans are aware of.
Yeah, so if it is an amalgamation of us, then that means it's an amalgamation of agents, which makes it a meta-agent. Right?
No, we are just reflections, emanations of it. Like, we are little copies of the greater thing. Like, being able to be aware of large structures of it somehow. We're able to look out to literally the edge, to cast our consciousness to the edge of the observable universe. That's insane. Nothing's ever been able to do that before. We're the most crazy invention it's ever put together.
So I think that the breakdown is, and I think that being a meta agent would mean that it is aware of itself in all aspects. But I think that what Sean is saying, and I'm not sure, I'm just going to clarify, is that each individual agents are aware of themselves individually, but as the superconscious, they're not. They're not aware of
our awareness
of each
is
other.
its self-reference point. Like, there's not a separation between us and it. We're literally thoughts in its mind of itself.
Very
It's like if you really-
specious.
Narayana is source.
like if you take a universe with a bunch of like interference patterns of energy and you let it continue, all of those interference patterns of energy are going to be imprints of the previous ones that existed. So our awareness is we're only aware of things that existed prior to us.
So I think you have a huge contradiction in your perspective on God and your perspective on consciousness, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I see that what you see, Seth, but from his perspective, I think that the consciousness top down is like if it were aware of each individual cell, right? Then
Well, it's the
consciousness
hair.
would be a problem.
It's the hair analogy, right? Like Sean was saying, like, I can't feel my hair getting clipped because there's no connection between me and the hair. The hair has its own consciousness, but there's a connection issue. And the universe, it's the same thing. There's a connection issue. How are these things? How is it aware of how I feel? I'm just the hair.
Because
compared to it.
Narayana is source, bro. Everything is Narayana being everything else. It's not,
And it doesn't need to
connected.
be constantly separately
Everything-
connected.
Every single.
It can have pieces cleaved off of it, and they'll eventually come back in, and that's when it becomes aware of what happened to those
So
pieces.
imagine you're living in a simulation. You're in a video game. Then everything is made up of the same thing. Even if you've got different pieces of data that mean different things, it's all in one hard drive, right? You're all made of the source. And the source is being every byte, 1 and 0. It's being every single part of that.
Yeah, just because one part doesn't react to what's going on in another part doesn't mean that they're never going to become like there's never going to be a union between those pieces again. If there's never going to be a union between those pieces again, then causality is totally removed between those two regions. But that doesn't mean it's guaranteed to stay that way. You know, like those two pieces, like the hair, I could pick it up off the floor and then it's in my hand, and then all of a sudden I'm feeling it again.
Yeah.
We're all part of one hard drive.
So wouldn't that mean that the meta agent universe has no consciousness of all 8 billion humans because we have not connected to it yet?
Exactly.
Yeah, each unit of consciousness it like has its own memories, but like it's like there's an even gradient of consciousness between all parts.
There's an even gradient. So
maybe not even gradient, but there's a gradient of consciousness between all parts.
Did that answer my question, or did I miss it somehow?
What exactly are you asking there? Are you saying that the consciousness of the universe is an emergent factor of all of an emergent property of all of our consciousnesses? No, our consciousnesses are emergent property of the consciousness.
So is this universe consciousness conscious of what I'm thinking right now?
You're conscious of it, so yes.
So no, technically that would be no.
No, I mean, you're part of the whole thing. I think God is. I think there's like if everything is part of Narayana and God, then God
there's no second agent aware. No, like there's not. This is non-dual.
Let me put it into a programmatic perspective. I think that God knows that the data has been recorded, but being conscious of it. Oh wow, this just happened. Oh, a thought. I don't think that that's what's happening.
I think so. I think on a transhumanist level, that's the idea of stacked awareness and comprehension. If you're able to conceive of and experience all things because you're the thing having the universe that's experienced, then yeah, I think it's all as it's happening, assimilated, and that information is not only assimilated at that moment, because space-time, you're outside of space-time. The beginning of time now, from the beginning of time on, you have the information that's just been created at the future at the end of that. As you've been playing the game, it goes. You have that information from the beginning of time, so it's fully aware of everything because it's aware of what it's going to be. Because it's again, you're made of data on a hard drive. It's different kinds of data, but it's all in one format. It's all made of one thing.
So, like, we can cut brains in half, right? There's the corpus callosum. We can do a surgery. We cut the brain in half. What does that do? It creates two distinct.
Nothing good.
It creates two distinct personalities. Right? So, like, if you cut your brain in half, the left half of your brain loses consciousness of the stuff on the right brain, which shows integrated consciousness requires connection, and it's an intimate connection. It's not like space-time travel. It's like the flow of electricity is the connection. If you sever the flow of electricity, you lose connection to that consciousness. Where
I think
is the
you're
flow of
just creating.
electricity that connects all of this consciousness?
No. There is no connect. Like there's two. Once you separate those two vats of water, the interference
Yeah.
pattern that trolls along their surfaces doesn't interact from one side to the other. But there's still an awareness in each one of the vats.
Yes, there's two separate awarenesses that have no consciousness of each other.
And that two separate, like the two-ness and the oneness of the number of awarenesses within the skull is all a result of the consciousness just not having access to the other side. Like the consciousness is in each vat, right? And the vats, they lose their connection, so the ripple pattern doesn't interfere from one side to the other. So now you have two patterns to be aware of instead of one.
Right. But I guess my point is, I don't have access to your consciousness because I don't have an electric link to your brain. So the universe doesn't have access to your consciousness either because the universe doesn't have an electric link to your brain.
I think the universe is your brain. Again, with Narayana as source, Narayana just kind of means like the vessel in the water, you know? And so space isn't vacuum. Space is basically closer to water, or even if it's expanded into like a vaporous gas or something like that. We're still talking about essentially molecules and things that are being. So it's all made up of one thing. Quantum entanglement would say that they all were one thing. I think that's the point. That were and is and will be, that symmetry of space-time is irrelevant when you're talking about something that's a multi-dimensional awareness, right? And that's maybe the bigger goal here. Is saying if sentience is a thing, and sentience stacks, and we get political bodies of, you know, harmonized sea amoebas that become multicellular organisms, and eventually, you know, these political bodies are even more stacked with awareness, then it would make sense that everything is either going to evolve into a universally aware omnipotent being that's omnipresent, or that it already was and became and is from that, which makes the most sense to me because of structure, symmetry, the things that we're experiencing that are not just by random chance.
Yeah, I don't mean to imply any telekinetic phenomenon or anything. Just because one point of the universe is aware of itself and another point of the universe is aware of itself doesn't mean that they're going to be transferring information instantaneously.
Yeah, but if the entire universe is a simulation that's being created by this Rick and Morty God character, you know, then in a sense, it makes the most sense that the entire game is being experienced.
Echoverse.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm watching Grand Theft Auto and the days go by really quickly, and I'm like, wow, it's just been like 6 days in GTA 3, you know, that's amazing, right? But for GTA, they're just thinking to themselves, you know, wow, it's just, how could this person possibly experience, you know, years, and it's like this time dilation thing becomes more and more important as we realize time is really just a frame of reference we have for connecting and being, it's again about sentience. This is one frame of reference, this is another frame of reference, I'm going to map them out, the differences and changes. We only do that because it's biologically valuable. That might not be necessary if you're immortal.
Yeah, I think that literally time and space are just abstractions of the universe that we live in. Again, products of the consciousness.
I think I'm down with that.
All right. Well, let me look. How'd that poll do? And we're at the 2-hour mark, so if there's anything else you want to make sure we cover, we can work on that. We got God exists, 87%. Sorry, Seth. God wins again. I'm sorry. Can't. 93. 7. You're just.
Wow.
I'm ending the poll here because it's only going to get worse for you and better for God.
It's fine.
That's just how it always works. This is how it is.
Go God!
I believe that there's a version of God out there that appends to Seth's idea. I do believe that because I believe
Appends
that's
to my idea.
Yeah.
Or you mean there's an agentic God exists? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lonergan would be right there with you, JP. Lonergan was saying, like, we need to listen to the atheists. We need to figure out what the atheists are experiencing because epistemologically it's really interesting and important to our metaphysical studies. But he was also a Jesuit priest, so he was just trying to help them along, you know? Like, so we'll get there. We'll get there.
So generous. So loving.
Have you read any of
so much love.
Seth, have you read any of the Book of Soigo?
Soigo? No, I haven't even heard of that.
Man, you just got to touch on it just one time. You're gonna love it,
dude. The Book of Soigo is a John Dee thing. What is it? Tell us
about it. It's also called Alderaya. It was just a book of basically gobbledygook for many hundreds of years until the early 2000s, when
Computers
cryptologists
decrypted it.
I guess, yeah. So a cryptologist was level 20. He wasn't even a mathematician. Yeah, he was just a DM, a dungeon master, who was hobbied in cryptology, who happened to break down the crypto cipher, yeah, and then was able to use that to relate it to other John D. Translations, I guess. So the book basically refers to an agential creator, and having created a dimension within himself, a physical dimension, which then he started creating other agents, that had specific duties, which then went to create another dimension inside of that dimension, and then another dimension inside of that dimension, and so on and so on and so on until we reached where we are now. And the whole book, weirdly enough, is written like the guy was a programmer. Whoever wrote it like he was,
what makes you say that?
Like he was a technical engineer for the universe. That's literally how it feels, man.
It's all math. It's all these number squares. It's all these like formulas, syllogisms.
Yeah, it's a bunch of formulas and shit, man.
A lot of Jacob Boehm's like that.
Formulas, man.
Yeah.
I mean, cool. It talks about rays, that God created rays, and it just in rays of rays. Now get this: if you take the word rays and you just add an AR to that, what do you get? An array in a programming language. You definitely have arrays of arrays, right?
Wow. Yeah, and that's interesting.
The universe, as we know it, was originally on this plane, and then they created a bunch of other planes of arrays, and then of that more arrays, and to find the right spot to create life, in my opinion.
We're gonna have to.
Wasn't this like the pre?
Because
this was like before quantum theory, right?
They probably went to billions of other dimensions before they could find just the right one to manufacture life.
Dude, Isaac Newton's corpuscular theory of light, that light is actually particles. We need to do this all again. It's this whole thing.
That was like the prelude to quantum theory, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's
he was like when people 400 years ahead of his time with that one. Maybe not 200 years.
I mean, it depends what you look at, because the Arabs were doing it first. But that's the point, I think, with the Soya, because they were getting their information from the Arab alchemists, and they're like, okay, well, let's try it.
I think Newton was just as important as Galileo and Einstein as far as optics and gravitation and all that. Like and then he threw calculus out there, like, oh yeah, this is the thing I used to do all that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank God there was like that quarantine that he got to stay inside, and
Really?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. There was like a plague, and so he got to read a bunch of books on his own. He's like, well,
yeah, that's wild. Software did advance a lot during this quarantine too. That was crazy. I wonder what happened during the Spanish flu outbreak in 1910.
Well, don't
probably
get too excited, because
cool
the Dutch, man, like with the tulip hysteria. So it's not always good during a plague. But we're 2 hours deep. We should do this again soon. I'm gonna play the song.
Absolutely. Again, everybody.
Chasing all my dreams, aiming to thrive, even when
We'll see you guys later.